watching the Forefront Church video podcast. And wherever you're at viewing online, we just want to say thank you and welcome. And one of the ways that we can help connect with you is we want to hear from you and where you're at and how we can help. And so head over to forefrontchurch.info after the message and click the Connect tab. It's a great way for us to help you along your spiritual journey as you connect with God and learn about Jesus. And so sit back, relax. We hope that you're challenged and encouraged from today's message. Good morning, 10 a.m. How are you guys doing today? Welcome. Get loud for everybody that's watching online. Glad that you guys are with us as well. Give them a hand there. If you're local and you have no other excuse, you should be here and not on there. And so, but we're thankful for you guys who get to tune in. A lot of people seeing them chime in. They're like, hey, I'm working at the hospital. Hey, I'm doing this. Hey, I worked a late shift and it's hard for me. I'm like, totally understand. And so, man, I'm thankful that we have that technology to be able to do that. But it is good to be back with you guys. Dan did a phenomenal job, and so did Brandon while I was gone. Give it up for them too, by the way. Just super thankful that we have a staff and volunteers and everybody that I can be on the other side of the planet, that if something were to happen to me, and man, things keep rolling here, because this is not based on me, this is based on Jesus. And so I'm thankful for them and our staff and everybody that jumped in to be a part. And we're continuing today our series, Get Over It, as we look at what does it mean to move from desolation in our lives, which maybe for you this morning you go, Jason, my life isn't all that desolate, but I'm not on this whole like God and Jesus train, and I get it. I would say that maybe it doesn't feel that way, but there are portions of your life that while they might not feel desolate, they are not whole until we get over ourselves and all the hang-ups that we have about God and faith, church, Christians and whatnot, and get to the other side where we see that there is life and life abundant in Jesus, and that we can watch that flourish and move. That doesn't mean it's always going to be the case. There's going to be moments where we get glimpses again of difficult times, but all in all, we get to watch as God does a beautiful work in your life and in mine as we begin to follow Him. And we're going to jump right in. And so if you have a Bible, I'd love for you to turn over to Galatians chapter 5. It's in the New Testament of the Bible. If you don't have a Bible, we give them away for free. We say this every week at the Get Connected table in the lobby. Stop by there, pick up your brand new Bible. You can highlight, write in it, whatever the case may be. That is your Bible. You will not get struck by lightning if you write in your Bible. Write in it, highlight in it, do all those things. That's your Bible to keep. There's no catch. Use that. Bring your new Bible back each week. Or if you're more inclined to use a digital version, every single week, we use at forefrontchurch.info. If you swipe on over to the Notes tab, not only can you find a way to get a digital Bible, but we have all of the notes and things that we're going to talk about today right there for you, because I know that many of you, if you're like me, where you get distracted easily, it's a great opportunity to keep everything right there so you can focus on the message and what God has to teach you, because we know that if we give you those tools and we engage not just during this hour, but also throughout the week, that your faith will begin to grow and flourish in ways that you never thought possible. And so you turn over to that passage. It's the passage we've been looking at every single week. And over the 9 weeks, we're looking at this desolation to new life and how to get over it. And what does it look like when we move in new life? Well, it looks like this over in Galatians 5. But the fruit of the Spirit, when we begin to follow Jesus, is love, joy, peace, forbearance, which is a fancy way of saying patience, which is what we're going to look at today, kindness, goodness, faithfulness, gentleness, and self-control. Against such things there is no law. I was thinking a lot about this. I get my messages done about 3 to 4 weeks in advance, and so this message in particular was done well before I left to go on my trip to Vietnam with our team. And the team itself was phenomenal, as we really were ambassadors on behalf of Forefront. Even though you might not be able to go, we were representing God in this church where we want to see people moving from, and most people would think, oh, Vietnam is desolation, and that here in the United States we have life. And I need to kind of caution you on that. There are people that are moving quite fruitfully in life and finding joy. And well, these pictures are a little small example of some of the interaction that we had as a team. Had a great opportunity to share with these kids and many more while we were there. And these two kids were straight trouble. I have a whole series of photos when they were those kids that if you were in the classroom, you're like, who is the class clown? Who is the kid that went to the office? This kid right here. And he was one of my favorites all week, I got to tell you. Just a lot of fun and energetic. And even this little girl, you might not be able to tell from being far away, but even her smile, most kids in the United States, they're just kind of like, oh, go to be at school, whatever. She was so excited. We provide this nutrition program, which you'll hear about in the next month or two, that has transformed this community through the interaction there. And you'll hear more about that. I won't get into a ton. But she was smiling. You could see there are teeth that are gone and some teeth that are rotten away. And she could not stop smiling when we were there and just sharing with her. And it was so cool to see and be a part of. And over the next couple weeks, kind of shifted my messages a little bit to share kind of a picture of what takes place when we get to be a part of that, even in light of this series that we're in. Because I had all this in mind, heading that direction, 9,000 miles to the other side of the globe. And God, what do you have in store for us? And we want to embody these very precepts of love, joy, peace, and patience. And here's the thing that you have to remember, and I hope that you hear clearly, that no matter if you are here in the States or here in Vietnam, any of these places, or whether, people say, I need to get rid of my job because my job is really heavy, and if I could just get rid of my job, then I could move from desolation to this. And I go, well, if those same traits are in you in this job, when you move to the next job, it's going to be the case. They go, oh, I need to move because if I move, then things will get better. And I go, cool. Those problems that you have with you here? When you move to Idaho, they're going to be right there in Idaho. No, they won't. I'm like, okay, cool. Let me know. And they message back, my problems are here. Yeah, because you were there and now you're there and the problems aren't going away. And people think through these things in their marriage, when they're parenting and all of this. And they go, I'm running out of patience. If I could just shift, things will get better. And I even had that mentality going from being in the States to going to Vietnam, go, clearly, they have less than us. We're going to be able to do these things. And this is like, my 5th or 6th time being able to go. And, well, some things welled up in my character that I did not quite realize. I thought that, you ever had something that goes on and it happens and it spurs up in your life? You go, ooh, I thought I had a handle on that. And then you realize, I did not have a handle on that. Well, this was the case when we went to Vietnam, and it all kind of falls around this here. See, for many of you guys, you go, that's just a cup. Well, when you're traveling to Vietnam, you need to make sure that you're well hydrated, and you don't want to drink the water that's there. It's not going to kill you, but it will give you what I like to call Montezuma's revenge. And so if you're not quite sure what that looks like, just ask a neighbor. And I'm not going to divulge all of that, but you want to be able to drink clean water while you're gone. And so one of the very first things you want to do, drinking bottled water or fill up at the proper stations that we provide to get clean water. And so I fill up my water bottle, and where we're at, on this particular day, on the first day, we travel up to the highest point that we've ever been in, the most remote part of Vietnam we have ever been in. We've traveled 9,000 miles to one of the most unreached people groups and one of the furthest places. And then in the furthest place, we travel up the furthest to this remote school that we're going to be. No electricity, no running water. Now, all of those things are changing thanks to the generosity of Forefront Church. But all of these things away, and so we get there, and I have my bottled water. I get it out, and we're doing work there, like heavy manual labor, not like, here in office stuff and all that. And we start working, and I set my bottle to the side, and we start working, we're doing this thing, and I start breathing heavy. Brandon, I love Brandon, our creative arts pastor, but if we tell him to do anything around the building, it might just be like move a box, even if it's a little box, he'll pick it up and be like, he does this breathing thing like he's going through like Lamaze. And and I'm like, you okay? You're going to have a baby right now? Like, he has this breathing thing. And we kind of joke about it. And now, like, he's embraced it. And it's been fine. We all have these quirks that we have with one another. And so, like, I'm doing, like, real work. And then I start breathing. And I'm like, all right. I'll turn into Brandon. I need to go up there and so I walk up the hill that we're doing. We're doing this big concrete sidewalk. And so I go up there and I go get my water bottle. And I have allergies. And so I, take medication, whatever, and I drink out of the bottle. Immediately, I can feel my lips start swelling up. And I'm like, whew. And so have you ever seen that movie Multiplicity, where like they make multiple of the same guy? That's what goes on inside my head. And it's always like, where'd you fill it up? Hey, what'd you do? And there's all these things going through my mind. Did I fill up in the wrong spot? What happened? And I'm going through everything, and I can feel this happening, and I'm freaking out because the closest, and I use the term loosely when I say the closest semblance of medical help is an hour and 45 minutes away if our transportation was there, which it's not, because it drove back down the mountain, and so we have to wait for that. So I'm way over 2.5, 3 hours away from getting medical help, and I'm going through this. I'm like, what did I do? And I can feel my lips just swelling up, and I'm like, is this the good time to take a selfie? Like, duck lips and whatever. Not. You ladies that do that, stop. Just stop. And so I'm very much like seriously freaking out. And this in about a minute and a half span. And then I stop and I'm like, wait a second. And I go and I grab my bottle because I'd set it down because I'm wigging out. And I smell, someone had decided to put Orajel on my cup, which now is funny. We can all laugh together. Everybody was like, are we allowed to laugh? You're allowed to laugh. But what I didn't divulge to them is I have had moments where I've taken certain things like that and have had an allergic reaction, which I kind of did. I didn't talk to them about this because I wasn't going to throw the trip, but we're all adults here, and so I want to let you, I was pissed off. So I was angry. At the top of this mountain in a remote village, I was angry. I found out what happened, but I didn't say a word. Clean off my cup, set it down. I go back to work, because that's what a man does, just goes back to work. Doesn't play games like children. And so I knew who did it. We had a teenager on our team, and I knew they had an accomplice who is sitting in this room right now, and I'm not going to look at you, but you know who you are. And so I go about my business, and later on, everybody's now stopped working, and we're taking a break, and I can see the giggling and whatever, and I'm just drinking my water like this, like a boss, just staring her down. And she's like, how does your mouth feel? I'm like, fine. She's like, nothing. I'm like, nothing. She's like, because I put some, I know what you did. Like I'm trying to process because I'm mad. Like I'm fire mad. I'm like, you had no idea you could have done whatever. I didn't get into it because I'm not going to pull the dad card. Like, you have no idea. What if I had an allergic reaction? Then we're away and then whatever. And then my face swells up. I look like Sloth from the Goonies and whatever. And I didn't do that because I love Jesus and I'm a grown man. But I was impatient in that moment. I was very angry, was frustrated, but I was like, because when I go to those places, not that I don't like, we play pranks all the time here in the office, especially to Becky Bruner, and we play pranks and we do this stuff, but when I'm in another country, 9,000 miles away, I'm there to build relationships and do work. I ain't there to play. You want to play, go find a theme park. We're there to work, we're there to invest, and so the whole way down the mountain, I'm mad. Like I've lost my patience. The very thing that I'm thinking about my sermon coming up in 2 weeks. And today, and I'm thinking through all that and I'm mad. I'm like, I can't preach a sermon on patience. I'm ready to leave somebody dead on the top of this mountain. They're going to leave. And I go back to my Bible app and I open up the passage that God knew that I needed it more than this moment. I needed it almost 2 weeks ago as we got in a van and we start trailing our way down and everybody's talking and laughing and I'm plotting people's demise. And I'm like, no, Jesus, I need more of you because I'm angry. And I go to the passage that I had written over a month before I left, written down from Philippians chapter 1, verses 3 through 6. Paul writes these words. He shares, I thank my God every time I remember you. In all of my prayers for all of you, I always pray with joy because of your partnership in the gospel from the first day until now. And so he's encouraging those who are following Jesus, saying, listen, I get it. You're doing great, and I want to let you know that I'm proud of you. And I'm thinking to myself, you would not be proud of what my thoughts are right now. And then it gets to verse 6. And I tried to hide because I'm a crier now that I have, daughters, and we just cry at everything. And I'm in a van 9,000 miles away, angry about a dumb prank, realizing I've acted childish. And God's putting me in my place with verse 6, being confident of this, that he who began a good work in you, you could put somewhere in there if you wanted to interject, he who began a good work in you in dealing with your patience, in dealing with your love, your joy, your peace, will carry it out into completion until the day of Christ Jesus. And what God did in that moment was do a complete 180 in my heart, my attitude. It's like, God, I'm not going to get derailed. It almost derailed me. God's like, you're not going to be derailed. I have more in store for you. And he did. The next day, we went to another school that we've been a part of ever since we started going there. It's actually the first school that I went to back in 2009. The school had grown. They have, over 100 more kids there because they built more classrooms and more dormitories. Because kids, when they go to these schools, they travel from far away and they can't go back home. So they actually stay all week at the kindergarten and elementary school, and then they travel back home on Friday and stay there. And so if you're, as a parent, you're like, what in the world? Many of these kids, to be able to get to these schools, but they go because of some of the things that have happened through Forefront Church and God there. And we're there, and so we decided to do one of the most beautiful things ever. We do a spa day, where a lot of these kids, they rarely get baths, and so we go and clip their nails, fingernails and toenails, wash their hands, wash their feet, comb their hair, do all the girls get fingernail polish, the works, which, by the way, I will tell you that it only takes one time for you to learn that if you're on nail cutting station, that you don't joke around with your mouth open. So just leave that there for you. Yeah. And the rest of the time, you're like, yeah, move quickly away from that station. And God's like, I already knew it was going to plan. There was this one little girl that you see here that when we arrived at the school, all the other kids, they're pumped because we're friends. We're more than friends. We're family with them. So they run up and we're high-fiving and they're like, hey, and doing all this stuff. And even though there's a language barrier, they love us because we're family. They know us. We've been there. And the one little girl, this girl was standoffish, standing back and away from us. And she didn't want to have anything to do with us the first couple days. And we went and we were doing this spa day, and she's going through the line. And the whole time, she's getting her nails clipped, stone face. She goes hand washing station. It wasn't with any of the people. She just did not want to be. And my goal was like, I'm going to break her. She's gonna smile. And I'm like, I have 3 girls. I can do this. And you lose all dignity when you're there. You don't care about what you look like and what you do and everything else. And so she gets there, and she's at the station, and I'm washing her feet, and she's just still looking at me like this. And so I start doing the little piggy thing. I'm like, this little piggy, this. And she has no clue what I'm saying. But doing it and kind of like tickling her feet, whatever. And she finally like, and I'm like, gotcha! And she starts like smiling and kind of laughing and the whole thing. And then when she moves, and then finally, she's kind of getting into it, she moves to the finger painting station and she loses her mind. There is nothing that speaks to a woman's soul more than fresh nails. Whether you are in a remote village in Vietnam or here in Virginia Beach, paint them nails, you feel golden. Guys, listen up, I'm telling you. And so she is getting her nails done, and she is completely changed. Well, we leave, and we go do we have other projects we got to work on, and we come back the next day. They're doing, the people in the government are coming and visiting the school, and so they have their nice kind of uniforms on, and she sees me, and I have my phone, and she motions to my phone. I'm like, eh. And she's like, picture, and she pushes it, and I pull it up, and this is what she does. Yeah, and you guys are all, and I'm like, I'm weeping. All right, and so we see her, we hug, whatever, and then we have to go do more work the next day, and we come back the following day, and she's back in her yellow outfit, doing her thing, and they're playing this game. And I wanted to give you guys a glimpse. If we did this in the States, kids would die because they would like be crunching ankles and doing it. But I wanted to give you guys a little glimpse of the game, and so here it is. Maybe. There we go. And so they're doing their things, holding hands, and she keeps wanting to like come over, and I'm like, no, go play the game. And they're jumping, they have to have friends. Tell me if they did this in elementary school in the States, if there wouldn't be broken ankles and lawsuits. They're doing this thing all around, so calm, collected. These teachers, God bless them. They're doing the whole thing, and so you can see the one girl there, my little friend. And so they're doing this, and they can bring the lights back up and move on. So they're playing this game, and they're doing this, and she, after a while, stops at the back of the line, and people are like trying to grab her hand. She's like, no. And I'm filming, and she keeps motioning to me, and I'm thinking, I am not getting my big fat tail stuck in these little bamboo things. I'm going to fall, break the sticks that they've had for like 40, 50 years. I'm going to get stuck in a Vietnamese prison. Like, I'm not, like, all these things are going there. I'm like, no. And so you ever do those things, you're like, when a kid asks you to do something, you're like, nah, go ahead. She is not having it. She's like standing at the back of the line. People are trying to grab her hand. She's like smacking their hand away, pointing at me, telling me to come. And so finally, someone grabs the phone, like, you have to go over there. I'm like, I'm not. I'm going to get stuck. They're like, you. And so we jump in. They have one of the team has video of it, and I wasn't going to show it because everything was jiggling. But like, I'm holding her hand, and I'm doing it. We do like one time through, and I'm like, all right, high five. And she motions to me like a little general. She's like, go back around. Like, go back around. We're doing this again, Jack. And I'm like, I don't know how to tell you. I'm slow, fat, and tired. And so I keep like going, and we do this 15 more times. And by the end, we get to, and I'm like, whew, she can see I am winded. And she's like, you go. And I'm like, and I put on every bit of game face, and we just keep going and keep going. And it was in the moment that we started doing those last ones where I knew I had no energy. Like, I was losing all bit of it. But it's like, that's the longest song on earth. Like, if you find that thing, it goes way. It's the song that never ends. It kept going, and we play. And I realized I had completely forgotten about the moment that was about to derail. And I was like, what a beautiful thing it is for God to take over and have the patience, whether it be through a language barrier, through a game, for God to get me back on track, for God to get us back on track for what is true. And oftentimes when something gets unraveled and we start to lose our patience, we don't feel like we can ever make it through. And I want to encourage you that if God has brought you to it, that God will see you through it. That whatever moment that you're losing patience with, that you're feeling down, that you're feeling out, that God is going to help you through. The moment where you feel like you are in darkness, moving into His beautiful light, that God is going to see it through. But I want to caution you that patience is not, and it'll be here on the screen, fervent waiting. When people say, and I've heard people say this, you just need to wait on the Lord. You just need to wait. And like what they're saying is if you wait, God will unwrap all these things that you want. And that I need to let you know, everything that you want, even if you're patient, it doesn't mean God is going to do it. But it is not fervently waiting. It's focusing on the Father in floods, famine, and fame. The floods, when you feel like you're going to drown and it is overwhelming. In the moments of famine where you feel like nothing is there, God, where are you? And even in the fame, things where everything's going great because you're very tempted in that moment to be perfectly patient, but you think, I'm doing this on my own. God goes, no, you're not. You're doing it by my power. And you're only even doing it by the grace that I have to give you life and life to the full. See, one of the things that I've learned over time is that patience is in direct proportion to your and my faith. That our faith, as we trust Him and as He guides us, that it is in direct proportion to how patient we are. Because we go, oh, I'm just very impatient. Well, I would say it actually ties to your faithfulness. Do you believe that God will do what God promises that God will do? And before we get into some of the things that we can overcome, I want to encourage you in some things that patience isn't. You see, patience doesn't mean take abuse. If you're in a situation where you're being physically, emotionally, verbally abused, where things are hard, patience isn't just sit and take it. That there is a time that you step out of that you move forward, that you find healing, and that is not what patience means. Patience also doesn't mean to be silent, to just take things that are heaped upon you, whether it be from a disgruntled spouse or a friend or even from a child. That when you and I see injustice, that we stand up and we say, this is not okay. And while I'm going to be patient that God will do what he needs to do, I'm going to use my voice to speak out against these things because this isn't okay. And one of the things, especially within American Christianity, is patience doesn't mean expect results. And by that I mean expect the results that you want. I meet people that go, man, I'm just going to be patient and God's going to give me a Lamborghini. I'm like, whoa. Because I've been real patient and I don't have a bank account that I thought I would. And they're like, well, no. If I'm patient, because they hear, if I'm patient, then God will give me the desires of my heart. And I go, cool, that verse is right, but you're taking it totally out of context. They go, what do you mean? Well, if I honor God and I'm patient and I'm loving it, that if I honor him and do as he says, he's going to give me the desires of my heart. I said, have you looked at the rest of that chapter? I was talking with someone, they go, no. I go, read the rest of the chapter. They go, what do you mean? I go, well, if you look at the rest of the chapter, you'll see that all of that is about your changing heart that changes to be more like God's, to mirror the very image of Jesus. And so you're going to want the same things that God wants. And they'll be like, God doesn't want me to have, and they'll fill in the blank. And I go, well, I don't know. But I do know that our selfishness can lead us to think that God is this genie that only provides the things that we desire. And that's not the way that God works. Now, God will bring about results through your patience, but it may not be exactly what you want, which is why we end up losing patience. And I want to look at three things very briefly that happen when we lose patience. Here's the first one here on the screen. If you're losing patience, there's a chance that you've forgotten how big your God is. Because you're going through a situation like we all do, and oh, this is the worst. This is the end of the world. It's interesting. I saw a number of people, as you come back into the States, you get a different idea. You watch kids playing with, like in the 20s and 30s, they'd have a tire with a stick and they would run down the road. We were sitting there, we were watching these kids playing with motorbike tires like it was, like the best Xbox ever. And you see adults who have a dirt floor and no electricity and no running water that's clean, and they are joyful. And then you start getting the alerts as you get closer and closer to the States, and people are angry because their show got interrupted by a political post on a political video, or they got angry because someone cut them off in traffic, or they got angry, and you see all these things, and you're going to see the hashtag FML, and I'm like, come on, about the most ridiculous things. And I wonder if we've forgotten how big God is in the middle of all of this stuff, these first world problems. And yeah, your plight might be difficult, and you might have something that is hard going on in your life. But instead of telling God how enormous the pit is that we sit in, that we would look at the pit that we sit in and go, my God is big enough to handle every single bit of these things. I love the way the writer in Colossians reminds us. For in him all things were created, things in heaven, on earth, visible, invisible, whether thrones or powers. This is interesting. When we look at it, doesn't matter if it's Bush, Barack Obama, Donald Trump. God is still in control of what transpires, even if you have somebody that you don't agree with that is commander-in-chief. I know that may be shocking to you, but God is still in control, no matter who is in place. God is bigger than the president or your state leaders or your city leaders. God is in control in all of it. Thrones or powers or rulers or authorities, all things have been created through him and for him. That God can use whoever's sitting in the Oval Office to, even if they're a great or a knucklehead, that God can use their movement to build his kingdom. That may be shocking for you to hear, but even in the midst of plight, God can use it. Not only that, I think there's some things that we get confused when we're impatient. The other piece of this, the second one, is this. If you're losing patience, there's a possibility that you've replaced God's will with your own desires. We talked about this, that, I pray that God does blank. And God's like, I'm not going to do that. And we go, God, you're the worst. God, you're mean. Or maybe even we get to a place where, God, you don't exist. Or, God, you don't love me. My friend Brian, he gave me a book, and I was able to read it. I got it right before my trip to Vietnam, so I was like, this is a great time, and I'll read it on the plane, do whatever, read it in evenings. And so I was able to get through the book for coming back to the States, and I love the way that he puts it. He says, God rarely gives us exactly what we want, but he always gives us what we need. It's very rare that we hear the word need. At least in context, we usually say what we want, but then we classify it as a need. I need a smartphone. I need a new car. I need a bigger house. I need a better job. I need a different spouse. Maybe there's things that we want, but it's not what we need. I love the way the writer puts it in Romans chapter 12. Paul writes this. He said, therefore I urge you, brothers and sisters, in view of God's mercy, to offer your bodies as a living sacrifice, holy and pleasing to God. This is your true and proper worship. Do you know that you started worshiping before you ever made it here or watching online? You started worshiping the moment that you woke up your kids. For some of you, that worship didn't go very well. How you spoke to them, how you spoke to your significant other before you got here. If we looked at your last week, what would it say about your life of worship? How would it speak to how patient you are with people that aren't like you? The writer in Proverbs puts it this way. Be on the screen. And Lord, trust the Lord with all your heart, lean not on your understanding. In all your ways acknowledge him, and he will make straight your paths. You see, if you're becoming impatient, there's a chance that you're leading and moving down a direction where you're making your will God's will, and you're confusing the two. And God wants desperately for you and I to trust him in his will and not our own. The third one, and I think it's the most difficult to do, is if you're losing patience, you've lost focus, and it's time to pray and to stay. You see, most of the time when I encounter people as we're going through counseling sessions, and they'll talk about the things that are going on, well, I just need to get rid of relationship X, and I need to move on from job Y, and they talk about all these things. And while there may be moments few and far between where you do need to abandon those pieces, the chances are, more often than not, that you don't need to abandon them, that God actually is using the opportunity for you to stay and learn something. You know, in every instance where I wanted to run, and then I stayed, God used it to build the man that I am today. The moments as being a husband and being a father and being a pastor, every single one of them, the growing moments did not come when everything was great. It came from the moments where I wanted to run and I was impatient, and God said, I love you, but I have not released you, and so you need to stay. And so buckle up, grab some popcorn, Jason, and watch what I do. Like, all right, God, I'm going to sit and I'm going to wait. I'm going to trust you. And the writers of the Bible all across it encourage this waiting moment. Here are just a few of the passages. But they who wait on the Lord shall renew their strength. They shall mount up with wings like eagles. They shall run and not be weary. They will walk and not be faint. The other writer puts it this way. Wait for the Lord. Be strong and let your heart take courage. Wait for the Lord. Another one puts it this way. The Lord is good to those who wait for him, to the soul who seeks him. And finally, for the God alone, O my soul, I wait in silence. I wonder how many of us have just taken moments to be patient and wait without asking God anything. And just sitting in silence going, all right, God, what do you have in store for me? Waiting in silence, for my hope is from him. He only is my rock and my salvation, my fortress. I shall not be shaken. Pastor up in Northern Virginia in the D.C. area, his name's Mark Batterson. He just wrote this book, had the opportunity to finish before I left, called Whisper. It's a phenomenal book. I'm actually going to leave a copy up here. Talks about prayer and how to hear the voice of God. And maybe for you this morning, you're wrestling through trying to understand his voice. And I'll leave that up there. It's free. You can take it. If you're somebody who needs it, that'd be awesome. And I love the way that he puts it about midway through. He said, faith knows what God can make up, that God can make up the difference, no matter how big the difference is. See, I think we get stuck on this concept that we just have to run and find something new. I watch people that get held accountable. They build relationships here, and then someone is walking this out with them, and then they go, hey, I love you, but that isn't, we say this all the time, that you have people that love God and love you, but love God more than you, so they can say the things that are difficult. And I watch people that when they have instances where things are hard, they run. And they go, well, I don't have a place here at this church, or I don't have a place here with people, or I don't have a place, and they'll go on, whether it's in their marriage, their family, whatever, and I go, hey, God can make up that difference, but he's not calling you to run. Well, you don't understand. Actually, if it feels uncomfortable, more often than not, the best thing you can do is stay and be patient and watch the movement of God. We don't like to be uncomfortable. All the way in Vietnam, when my lips and face were swelling up, whew, I was hot, boy. I wanted to lash out. You know, it probably would have ruined the trip for a lot of people if I had acted in my own, just kind of, But it took sitting down, looking at that verse, going, God, you are patient with me, and I need to be patient with others. And you see, patience is not fervent waiting. It's focusing on the Father. In the floods, when you feel like you're about to drown. In the famine, where you feel like everyone has left you. And we've all, if you haven't felt that way at some point yet, I promise you, you will. I don't want to, wish that upon you, but the reality is it will happen, where you feel like no one is in your corner. But also, I think more often than not in the fame, when everything's going great, is the time to be patient with God and his work and trust that he's the one doing it and not on our own. Because the moment you think you're in the driver's seat is the moment that you need to buckle up. Because God is going to take you on a ride, and it's not going to be pretty, to shake you and I out of that movement, to show us who is truly in control. For many of us, when we look at patience, more than likely what we need to do is pick up the phone today and call somebody and go, hey, I haven't been patient with you, and I've acted out in ways that I shouldn't, and I'm sorry. I have not been living the life that I should. And it's not okay for you, and it's not okay for me to do that. Will you forgive me? Some of the most beautiful words that you can say to somebody else who you wounded in the middle of being impatient is, you know what? I'm sorry. And if statistics are true, if you didn't come alone, they're probably sitting next to you. Would you pray with me? Thanks for tuning in to the Forefront Church video podcast. Our hope and prayer is that this has left you encouraged and challenged you in your faith. And you might have some questions and some ways that you want to figure this out, and we want to help with that. Head over to forefrontchurch.info, and there's a couple different ways that you can connect. Click the Connect tab and let us know how we can be praying for you, or a staff member can be contacting you this week. Maybe you have just been encouraged by this and want to support the ministry here at Forefront Church. You can click the Giving tab, as well as other tabs that are in there to help you along in your journey with God. And so we're thankful for you. Thanks for tuning in, and we cannot wait to see you again here online on the video podcast. We love you, and we'll see you then.